He is a 13-year Marine Corps veteran with over a decade of experience in the fitness industry and has dedicated his adult life to understanding the fitness franchising industry. Delta Life Fitness was named top 100 game-changing franchises in 2018, 2019, and 2020. And he is a Texas A&M graduate. Whoop. Please join me in welcoming Josh Cherry. And please feel free to get up and dance anytime this music is playing. That was short-lived. You're welcome.
Thanks, David. Well, this is exciting, man. Good event. First one, great turnout. Glad to see it. Chamber, all the staff, the volunteers, everybody David was just talking about, thank you so much. I see how hard you guys work putting on this kind of stuff. And to all the sponsors, like they said, thank you guys. Can't do anything like this without the sponsors. Like I said, my name is Josh Cherry. I'm currently the CEO of Delta Life Fitness Franchising. I'm going to start it off with two quick combat-related stories, and then we're going to push forward. It's going to get happy, all right? We're going to start a little sad, and then we're going to bring it back around, okay? So hang in there with me. Graduated high school in 2003, grew up in Southeast Texas, immediately went straight into the Marine Corps. Spent about 13 years in the Marine Corps. The first half as a helicopter door gunner. Eventually went through Texas A&M and transitioned to be a helicopter pilot. As I was a helicopter door gunner back in the early 2000s, made 3 trips to Iraq, 05, 06, and 07. Made 3 combat tours. And that very first tour, I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm a long way away from chicken fried steak and mama's cooking, right? And Mother's Day weekend, in Iraq, on the western border of Iraq, right on the Syrian border, we were trying in this little town, and we were flying a lot of missions over this named operation, Operation Matador. And it was a big eye-opening experience for me. Like I said, being a long ways from home, a lot of stress, a lot of chaos, a lot of sleepless nights trying to get through it. One of the missions we went out on, a tank had run over a double-stacked anti-tank mine, and a lot of the people inside of it were hurt really badly. We landed under fire. We go in. It's pretty chaotic. I left my pistol in the helicopter because that's how smart I am. So I find myself ducked down behind a tank, taking rounds. We get some of the guys out of the tank. We load them up in the helicopter. A couple of the guys, unfortunately, did not make it. We spend the next 3 or 4 days just nonstop flying all these missions, just in and out. We go Winchester. In the Marine Corps, that means you expend all your ammunition and you go back and you reload. So for 4 days straight, we're going Winchester, we're coming back, we're taping up holes in the helicopter, and we're just continually going. Very little sleep, not a lot of food, and you keep pushing through it. And so we get to the end of all of that, probably the 4 most stressful days of my whole life, finally get my hands on a satellite phone, and call my girlfriend at the time, because when you're 19 years old, that's the most important when you get done with something like that. So I get my hands on a satellite phone, call my girlfriend, and she broke up with me. Right? Pretty crummy day. Pretty crummy day indeed. That's back in 2005. I promise you it's going to get better. Hang in there. We're going to bring that story back around at the end. But, you know, when I was in the Marine Corps doing the helicopter stuff, I really got to learn, the Marine Corps has got some of the best leadership training, momentum training, and the Marine Corps has a real bias for action. JJ, you probably remember in officer candidate school, and when you go to officer candidate school, they just make it such a point to tell young lieutenants, we don't care if you make a right decision, a wrong decision, just what? Make a decision. They have such a bias for making decisions and moving forward. And one of the ways they teach this to us is with this example. You know, the Marine Corps is just like in business. We try to learn from things that went wrong in the past so we can do them better in the future. The Battle of Anzio, this is 1944. It's the height of World War II. We're trying to open a 3rd front. We're trying to cut into Italy. We've already got the Eastern Front and the Western Front. We're trying to force the Germans to fight us on a 3rd front. We make this amphibious landing on Anzio to try to cut through and secure Rome and have that 3rd front so we can come up from the south from Italy. They secure the beach. They land. It's a successful landing. They push out. They secure the beachhead. And obviously, there's no judgment on this general who knows what all he's dealing with and seeing on that battlefield. But it's something we study because he paused. He hesitated. He had all that momentum, secured the beach. And they waited for about 30 days because it's scary to make those decisions and push forward into uncertainty. That's a hard thing to do. But because he paused, the Germans were able to run down this railway gun called the Anzio Annie. They had enough time to roll this all the way down the railway, and then they just started opening up on that entire front. That general finally got relieved. A new general came in. He took swift action, recaptured the momentum, and they did eventually cut through and open up that third front and secure Rome and continue to push up from the south. So that's just a really good story the Marine Corps shows us on how important it is to secure momentum and keep taking action and keep moving forward. So the two big questions I just want to talk to you guys about from things I've learned over the last 20 years or so from both being in the Marine Corps and growing Delta Life Fitness, both in good times and in difficult times. Two questions I want to talk about is, why is it so hard for us entrepreneurs to achieve those visions we have in our heads? And how do we move forward with all the uncertainty going on in the world today? And there's a lot of that. There's plenty of things we can look around at and be scared, like that general that was on that beach at Anzio, and not want to continue to step forward. So how do we continue to step forward with all the uncertainty that's going on today? That's two questions I want to talk about. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. So after the Marine Corps, I'm at Texas A&M doing the commissioning program. My job was really to train Corps cadets who were getting ready to go off to Officer Candidate School. Hunter, my oldest son, he's here in the crowd today. He was 5 at the time, and we had started a Cub Scout group for him at a new school there in College Station. And a group of the Cub Scout moms came up and asked me if I would put on a boot camp in the parking lot for them, like I was doing for the Corps cadet kids. So there you have it. January 17th, 2009, we did a workout in the parking lot just to a group of Cub Scout moms. And it continued to grow from there. We eventually went into a licensing model and warehouses where it was kind of like a CrossFit, but tailored more to women. And then eventually it became a nationwide fitness franchise that just serves women, 30-minute classes and on-site childcare. We've done some pretty cool things, but obviously we didn't start with a lot. We started in a parking lot with no funding, no money, no business experience, no degree, none of that. But we did have one thing: we had passion. And we had the ability to start taking action and making new decisions and just improving it day after day, month after month, week after week. We ended up creating something pretty cool. Today, Delta Life Fitness Studios, these are $500,000 studios. We've got 6 here in the Houston area, about 55 plus nationwide that are either open or under development across the entire country. And we've also had we've had some cool things. We've been on all 4 of the big news networks. We were in Club Industry Magazine 9 times. The Club Solutions Magazine Franchise Forecast. So the Club Solutions Magazine is the biggest magazine in fitness. And for years, I would always look at their franchise forecast because it's not a pay to play. The Club Solutions Magazine comes out with their franchise fitness forecast for the brands you should pay attention to for next year. And I would get this magazine every year and I would read it, and it's got the big brands in there: Orange Theory Fitness, Gold's Gym, Planet Fitness. And finally, back in 2019, we finally landed on the list. We got it again in 2020. And in 2021, we were on there again. One of our biggest accomplishments, we made the Houston Business Journal fastest growing privately held companies. We made it to number 22 on that list. We had some great coaching and help from Heightened Leaders Partners back there. We had 3 years of 100% revenue growth. 2017, 100% revenue growth. Did that again in 18. Did that again in 19. And we've created hundreds of jobs and helped thousands of people along the way. But it wasn't easy getting there, right? Like, there was a lot of obstacles we had to overcome just to get to that point. This is my Google list. If you guys know me, I make fun of myself quite a bit because, I make a lot of mistakes. And I think it's okay for everybody in this room, entrepreneurs, if you're wanting to do great things, to know that you don't know it all and you can figure it out. This is a real list, and there's a lot more of things I've had to Google along the way. Funny story, we're getting ready to do one of our first big investment deals with this California group with this big investment group in California. I get off the phone with my attorney and he says, "Hey, Josh, I'm going to send you over all the documents. Just go ahead and get those executed, send them back over to me, and we'll wrap this up." And I was like, "Yeah. How do you execute something? Like, I'm in the Marine Corps. What's going on here?" It turns out all you got to do is sign it, right? So not a big deal. So don't be afraid of what you don't know. Sometimes those big, scary words mean you just got to sign something. But we had plenty of things we had to overcome along the way, and we had a lot of game-ending moments. And that's what's really made this last struggle with COVID in 2020. I know it's tough for a lot of us because a lot of us felt like we had already gotten over a lot of those obstacles, right? One of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes, Steve Jobs says that the moment you realize everything you see around you was created by men and women no smarter than you and me is the moment you can do anything. And that really is true. And I've seen that, and I hope you guys believe that. But it wasn't easy. There was a lot of things. Turns out when you start in a parking lot and you try to figure it out as you go, you make a lot of mistakes, right? And that's okay. We realized that as we were trying to run as a license, we were, according to the Federal Trade Commission, we were really running as a franchise. So that's a no-no. So we had to make a license to a franchise transition, which costs about $500,000. And that was okay because we were only about $495,000 short of that. So that was quite the challenge, right? Moving back to Texas, a lot of you guys don't know, but we had built this infrastructure in Pace, Florida. If you don't know where Pace, Florida is, or ever try to fly into there, it's very hard. We got to choose where we wanted to move to grow this franchise, and we chose the Woodlands, Texas, because it's a special place. But coming back to move it here, it almost killed the whole thing. We had a whole corporate team and employees back in Florida. None of them made the move back with us. So that was an incredibly hard challenge. Moving back over here, just the prolonged stress when you're trying to do something like that for a long time, that never-ending happiness, just one more quarter, right? Like, I'll get there very soon. Megan recommended a great book to me the other day called The Gap and the Gain. It's a great book, and it talks about how us as entrepreneurs, we're always focused on the gap and never the gain. And so that like when you beat yourself up and you're not looking at the good things, it doesn't give you energy. That can be pretty tough to get through. So as we get through all these challenges, we felt like we had been through so many of them. And then you guys know what happened in March of last year. All the studios shut down permanently. We lost all of our West Coast studios. They didn't make it. California, Seattle, Arizona. I mean, they were forced to be closed down for months and months. And still today, we're faced with a lot of lingering hangover effects from staffing issues and manufacturing. It's a battle for us and for all you guys. And I know it's tough out there right now. But continuing to move forward, like I said, that's why I love that Steve Jobs quote so much. Because a silly little kid from Southeast Texas who started a business and drew a logo with a crayon, made enough iterations and kept with it and made something that was pretty cool, right? And I know that we can all do the same thing, and I've seen it happen. So why is it so hard to achieve those visions we have in our head? And like we just talked about, the answer is in that process. The answer is in doing it. We don't have all the answers when we first start. So why is it so hard for us to achieve those visions that we have in our head? You guys have all seen this, right? This is the entrepreneur roller coaster. It's tough. When you're on this, you have days where you feel like you're doing well and other days where it's not going so well. But I can tell you, it's gonna come down to one of two things. When you're on this cycle, you can become your own worst enemy. There are the external factors, and as long as you can learn to realize you can't control all the external factors and just keep going forward, you're gonna get stuck in one of two loops, either a failure loop or an OODA loop. And I see JJ's taking a picture here, so we'll give him just a second. And this slide right here, I'm not taking shots at anybody. There's been several times where I am definitely the entrepreneur. There's times where I have business ideas or new revenue ideas for my current business and don't take action on them. So what happens? We get this idea, we get inspired. We want to start a new blog. We want to write a book. We want to start a new business, a not-for-profit. We get that idea. We get all this inspiration. We have all this energy. And then every single time we're going to be hit with resistance. It's inevitable. We are going to be faced with resistance as soon as we try to do something new. Now, when we get hit with that resistance, we have a couple of options. We can sit back and we can think that the resistance means we weren't as good as we thought. And we can start going into the failure loop, right? Where we're like, oh man, we're hitting this resistance. This wasn't going to work. What was I thinking? I can't do a blog. I can't do a podcast. I can't write a book. I can't start this nonprofit. We start getting into a very bad self-deprecating loop in our own head of failure, doubt, and then stress, which is a great tool, but can also kill you. And then discipline being proactive, and we think we can just outwork it, right? Or we can go into that OODA loop where we observe, orient, decide, and act. And this is what the Marine Corps did such a great job of talking about, was this OODA loop right here. This is a great decision-making process for a lot of reasons. And this is what we were talking about when we were talking about the Battle of Anzio. You know, and because, like I said, Marines know that that Marine lieutenant who makes a decision, gets some more information, does some action, gets some more information, makes another decision, takes some more action, he is going to move faster and win, opposed to the lieutenant who's trying to get all the information, right? We're never going to have all the information. And everybody who's still doing business today exactly like you did in January of 2020, anybody? The world's changed, and it's been frustrating and it's been tough, but we've all been forced to modify and change how we show up for our consumers. Our consumers' lives have changed. We've had to make a lot of modifications. If you can get comfortable, but sometimes when you have to change, you can almost feel like you don't have a plan and you're just wandering. If you can get okay with yourself knowing it's a process, we have to observe, orient, decide, and act so that we can get more information and do that again. And the person either on the battlefield or in business that can make the fastest revolutions of that OODA loop will win, right? It's all about being able to get through and make better decisions. And the only way we can make better decisions is if we get more information. Like I was saying, that we went through a lot of things to get through the 2020 part, and then everything that's happened over the last 18 months has really challenged me. It's been tough, and I've learned a few things, and I want to share those with you today. Right, trying to control everything like we talked about. That's number one. But why do we try to control everything? We have real things we got to worry about. We got mortgages and kids and a community we're trying to support. And so we try to control it. And what 2020 showed me is no matter how smart we think we are, no matter how hard we work, there are simply things outside of our control. Where's Mr. Randy Lovelace? Is he here? Is he not here? Randy Lovelace posted something I thought was really good a couple of weeks ago. Did you guys see it? He said, a bird is never afraid of the tree, of sitting on a tree, because her faith is not in the branch, but her faith in her own wings, right? If we can remember that also, if you're terrified of the one thing you're working that has to go right, the business you're doing, the nonprofit, the blog, the podcast, while you're building that and going through those OODA loop iterations and learning and getting better, you're building more strength in your own wings. So whether that branch breaks, that book, that podcast, that nonprofit, that business, that new revenue stream that you had an idea for, even though those may break, if you're still strengthening your wings, your relationships, your foundation, what you can do, your knowledge, that's going to help you push through a lot of stuff. You have to let people know you need help. Who knows stress like when you try to open your iPhone and it can't recognize your face from the recognition? You guys know what I'm talking about? That kind of stress when you wake up in the morning and iPhone doesn't know who you are. That's tough, right? And if you try to, and a lot of us, everybody in this room, you guys are hungry, type A driven people. It's hard for us to show people that we need help or we want to share that. We want to do it all ourselves, and we try to protect the family and the friends. Who does? Did anybody do that? I don't share my stress with the family because I want to protect them from it. You try to do that, and then it comes out really weird, right? They're like, "Hey, want to go to the park on Saturday?" And you're like, "No, we don't have time for anything." You know, and you kind of freak out on them. So you got to share that with people around you. And JJ is a great example for this. We've been, like I said, we've been going through some battles here this year, and we've had a hard time. And we've been on a great run. I mean, after having 100% revenue growth in 17, 18, 19, we've been in all these magazines. We're on Houston Business Journal number 22. It can be extremely humbling to go back to the community and say, I'm having a tough time right now, and I need some help. And we were trying to get some SBA stuff through, and I ran into a brick wall. And I sent an email to JJ. He called me right back, got me connected with an SBA contact down in Houston, and he got it solved for me. It's just a great example of sometimes you got to show, and it's okay. In fact, I think people would be proud of us. Another thing, when I first moved here, and you know, as you can see, I talk about JJ a lot. I got a slight man crush on him. Just want to be like JJ, right? So when I first moved here, they're like, hey, JJ ran the Ironman. I was like, well, I got to do that too, right? I got to try to keep up with him. So I signed up for the Ironman. I spend all this ridiculous money on a bike and training and everything. And race day gets here. The swim went okay for me. You know, I get done with the swim, hop out, hop on the bike. really messed the bike up. Realize now everybody was out there like the morning of redoing their tire pressure. I was like, I just adjusted mine like 2 weeks ago. I'm set, right? So hopped on my bike, destroyed me. I mean, I still have scars on my back from the sunburns. Kristen can tell you. Ironman didn't go well for me. It was tough. And I remember I finally get done with the bike, and the run portion, the 26.2 miles at the end, is 3 laps around the Woodlands. I do the first lap. I'm barely surviving. I do the second lap, and I have spent all this money, and this was a really important goal of mine. And Kristen comes and meets me. My wife, Kristen, comes and meets me at the checkpoint on that second loop around. And Kristen's a great person to have on your side if you want to hit a goal, because she's a pretty tough coach, right? She can hold you accountable. So she meets me out there, and I'm hurting, and she's like, you better pick it up. She was like, if you keep this pace, you're not going to finish. You got to go faster than you did on that last lap. That was super demoralizing for me at that point for a couple of reasons. I didn't think I could keep going at the pace I was already going at, let alone go faster. Somehow I did, though. You know, I hung in there. I found that 18th win like most of us do when we're up against challenging situations, and I pushed through and I finished the Ironman. But I thought about that, you know, with everything we've been facing in 2020, it's almost as if I got 10 feet from the finish line of a very brutal race, and the race officials rush out and say, hey, something went wrong on the race. You got to go back to the beginning right now and start all over. That's kind of what it's felt like for us with Dust Life and so many of my business friends that I know. We've worked so hard and we got so close, and the race got reset and we had to restart at the beginning. So how many of us, if we went down to the Ironman and we were at Barry Blanton's aid station, because I know he's all about that every year, and we're at Barry Blanton's aid station and we're there supporting and we're volunteering for the Ironman, and we see this one guy who almost got done and had to reset and come back. If we were sitting there watching him come by our booth and he was struggling, if he was barely able to take one step, would we judge him for showing weakness, or would we be incredibly inspired that he's still going and he's still putting one foot in front of the other? And that's what I had to realize. I had to realize this community will support you when you need help if you're still going. You may not be in the same situation and doing as well, and your business may not be thriving as December of 2019 or January of 2020. But if you're still going, we're here to support you. And I realized that from this community. The community's been here to support me through it, and it's great. Miracle phrase, this too shall pass. You guys know how good that one can be. The venture might not make it, but the skills and the relationships you're working on always will. And that's why it's so cool to what Randy said, you know, have that faith in those wings. And we always have the ability to pour into those around us, no matter the situation. So that's good. And then helpful tactics. You know, we hear it all the time. You got to put your oxygen mask on first, but it is incredibly true, right? You've got to take care of yourself and your foundation and your core business, and then you can help the community. And if you do it in that order, if you take care of things in the right way, you can help a lot more people. Sometimes when we get stretched too thin and we're trying to take care of people at the top of that pyramid before we've worked on our foundation, it gets pretty tough, and you end up letting the people down around you that are closest to you. For me, it's working out and meditation. That's huge. But the visualization desk, that's a really good one. I use that going through flight school to really cheat. I was able to do more flights than the other kids I was going through because I visualized them. The visualization desk is a technique taught in the book Psycho-Cybernetics. Tom Brady uses it. A lot of really successful professionals use it. And what the visualization desk is if you have an important thing coming up, a meeting, a conference call, a one-to-one you're going to, you're getting ready to go to a new networking event, and you got to give your pitch, whatever it is, that important thing you have coming up. What the visualization desk teaches is right before you go into that event, you close your eyes and you imagine yourself sitting at a desk, and you pull out everything that's on your mind right then. Picking up the kids from school later, groceries, what's going to be for dinner, getting the laundry done, this proposal I'm late on. Pull out everything in your head and just imagine setting it on the desk. Then pull out a drawer and imagine yourself putting everything into that drawer and close it. And then pull out the one thing you're about to go focus on. For me in flight school, it was the helicopter. I would pull the helicopter out, and I would put everything else that was in my head in that drawer, and I'd just pull the helicopter out. And then I would literally just visualize the perfect outcome I wanted from that flight, how I would greet my instructor when he showed up that day, how I would have the plane ready. I would briefly go through the entire flight in my head, and I would visualize it all the way down to the point where after the flight, I would visualize him walking around the front of the helicopter, shaking my hand and saying, Lieutenant Sherry, great job. I haven't flown with a lieutenant that's been this prepared in a long time. So I didn't really do anything different to prepare for the flights other than that 5-minute exercise compared to all the other kids that I went in. And I went in with you guys know me, I'm not a math guy, I'm not an engineer, I'm a political science major, right? With a women's only fitness boot camp. Aviation and engineering and math is not my thing. But I ended up graduating top of my class, first in my class in flight school. And I really believe it had a lot to do with that visualization desk. When you can visualize the outcome you're trying to do before you go into it, world works in crazy ways. Like things just come together for you and it really helps you get through those. So those are some tactics that have worked for me well over the years. Just being in this community, you guys already know. It's one of the reasons we chose to move back to the Woodlands. People all across this country talk about the Woodlands like it's this mythical place. And it kind of is, right? What type of community can you have 7 Fortune 500 companies, but also be able to pick up the phone and call the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce when you need help, right? It's a huge community with a lot of resources, all the greatest stats, but we're a tight-knit group. I look around this room right now, I see so many of my friends that we've helped each other grow our businesses and supported. This is an amazing community to do great things. The man in the arena. I'm sure most of you have seen this, but I'm gonna read it anyway. It's one of my favorites. The man in the arena. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So that's why I'm going to go into the next question, and we're going to end with this last question here, and we're going to push through a couple more points. How do we move forward with everything going on in the world today? It can feel a lot for us right now, whether it's political issues, and apparently that means locally and nationally, right? Whether it's political issues, whether it's the airlines, whether it's the vaccine or COVID or the mask or the employee issues or staffing issues, manufacturing issues. No matter what it is, we've got plenty of things that feel, in fact, I Googled, how's the world going to end today? And in 0.59 seconds, I got 2.6 billion results, okay? So there is plenty to be afraid of, but I don't think it matters. We've got a great community. I think that if we know that the only way we can progress is to continue to put those foots forward. I think we all agree that even when people are struggling, if they're trying, we're going to support them, right? I think if you can remember what Steve Jobs said, that everything you see around you was created by men and women no smarter than us, we can do some pretty incredible things together for sure. So I'm going to go back to that story in 2005. So, 4 or 5 days of hard combat, finally get that satellite phone, and girlfriend breaks up with me, right? And in that moment, I feel like some of us may be feeling today with everything we just said, all the things that are going wrong and all the uncertainty. And I can promise you, as a young boy a long way from home, I felt that way. I felt like my life was pretty much over. I had 7 more months of a deployment in a place I no longer wanted to be in. My fully paid for vacation was not, the resort didn't look like the brochure, that's for sure. I've got 7 more months there. I've really dealt with some hard stuff. My girlfriend just broke up with me, but I kept going, like we all have so many times in those tough situations. I put one foot in front of the other. And the next time I got my hand on a satellite phone, I called this really hot girl from my hometown that I'd always had a crush on, but I'd been too afraid to ask out. and asked her when I got back from Iraq on that deployment if we could go on a date. And that woman's my wife, sitting in the back of the room today. And we've built just the most beautiful life together with 3 beautiful kids, all the businesses that we've been a part of together. It's been awesome, but we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's what we got to do right now. There are a lot of crazy things going on right now, but keep working on your business, reach out to the community, let everybody support you, lean back on us if you need help. Know that if your branch breaks, you're building the strength in your wings anyway. So you're going to be able to do great things. I'm so excited for this event. Thank you all so much for coming out. Have a great one. Do great things.
Yeah. Hi, it's me again. Cindy's going to love this, so I'm going to call an audible really fast. I know, and it's not even 9:30 yet. So we're quite ahead of schedule, which is awesome. So we're going to open up for questions for Josh. If anyone has any questions for him about his presentation or about his story, we will take those now.
What's your name? Jeremy. Jeremy's question was, what about imposter syndrome and how do you deal with it? It's a great question, Jeremy. Man, imposter syndrome, I don't know if you ever get over that one, right? There's one of my good friends and business partner in the back, Cody. Me and him talk about this all the time. It's you just always have it, and I don't know, even still to this day. I mean, even when I think back on the times where Delta Life looked like it was unstoppable and we were taking over the world, when things were easy, the imposter syndrome's a little higher. Like right now, I feel it a little less because I feel like I'm having to get grittier and work harder, right? So I almost felt it. I felt it worse in 2019 than I do today. But it's always a tough struggle. It's always something I'm struggling with. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And what was your name? Hannah. Thanks, Hannah. Hannah was asking, on the Google list, the difference between the S Corp and the LLC and how do we decide and go through that. How did I decide the first time? Didn't. Path of least resistance. I've created a few businesses since then, and it's tricky when you're first starting. Easy answer, Hannah. If you have the money, go pay all the great CPAs and lawyers and ask them, right? Most of the time, though, when entrepreneurs are just starting, they don't know what the business is going to be. It's usually, if you don't know what it's going to be and you're trying to figure it out, know that it's okay to start somewhere. You can start with a DBA. And if that lets you hop on the OODA loop and start taking action and getting more info, then do it by all means. That's my personal advice. Now, because even still with LLC or S Corp, and then in Texas, you can be either one, but file as the other one. We've had to learn a lot there. And now we listen to the CPA on what the best tax benefit is, but it's hard. It's hard to know which one you got to do there's usually somebody you can go talk to and usually you're okay to set up an LLC, but the franchising and licensing, that was a little more obvious for us. I mean, a license, there's really 3 things. If you do it, you are a franchise. If you take more than $600 a year in royalties, if they use your logo, and if you impose operational control, like they have to follow your systems. If you do those 3 things, the Federal Trade Commission sees you as a franchise. So you have to file as a franchise. Long story short, it's been a long, taking one issue at a time and trying to find the person or the who that's best able to help us solve that particular problem. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah. Oh.
Thank you. Oh, online. Hello, Linda Head, Lone Star College. Enjoyed hearing what you had to say today. The pandemic, how did you pivot your business and probably continue to do so with the pandemic? And how did you get support from the people that work for you, with you?
And what was your name again? Linda? Linda, that's a good question. How do we pivot? So I'll tell you, the chamber knows how much I believe in following some type of an operating system or something you got to work in your business and on your business. And it's so easy, especially when something like COVID happens, you can get locked down to just fighting the immediate fires that are right in front of you. And you can go months and years in doing that. I'm a huge fan. If you have a business, if you're a solopreneur or you're running a Fortune 500 company, once a quarter, you have to hit the pause, pull yourself out of the business and work on the business and just look at it. And if you need somebody for that, go see Megan from Heightened Leaders. She can help you out. You have to do that process. And we did that. When the world fell apart in March of 2020, we had already had our vision that we had set. And that's how we currently had the franchisees and employees and everybody working in the same direction. March 2020, everything changes. And a lot of our fitness competitors, everybody stopped spending money on marketing. They kind of just said, we're going to wait until 2022 to see how this has changed. We went into a quarterly planning session and we just asked ourselves a couple of questions. How has our consumer's life changed? Is our consumer going to go with Peloton, these other things? Do we need to look at having these, online workouts? And we realized that for our consumers, they didn't want an at-home workout. Now, they did want the choice and the convenience if they could. Their life had got a little more chaotic. So we had to add in a virtual component of the workouts, but we had to make it to where they can either do the virtual class or come in person. When they do the virtual class, they still got to see their ladies and their friends. It's still got to be a workout that's familiar to them. That was a lot of the changes we had to make. And then we also went and looked at, 10,000 fitness businesses in the nation closed permanently. That's 1 in 5. That's 1 in 5. 1 in 5 in my industry is shut down permanently. That's so we did that. We said, how can we go and work with these businesses that are closing down and try to serve their customers? The ones that are closing down, how has our customers' life changed, and how do we get in front of them? And the only way we were able to do that is taking a quarterly pause and looking at those things, and it enabled us to take a much different path. And so by the time we got to January of 2021, we had all of our studios that are across the country that made it through the shutdown. We had one of the best quarters we've ever had in Q1 of this year. But we just, we had to adjust and kind of look at how our consumers' lives have changed. And it was, trust me, at that point, we were without revenue for a while from all the gyms being shut down. Last thing we wanted to do was have to innovate and invest a lot in new infrastructure. When you build a franchise, you set that infrastructure. Last thing you want to do is have to go rebuild it. But the world had changed, and we could either try to stay doing things the way we had, or we could try to adapt to the new consumer behaviors. And that's what we're trying to do. Thanks, Linda.
Sorry. Mariana, nice to meet you. The Texas Franchise Radio?
Mariana?
Yes.
All right, Mariana is going to try and take a couple more shots at me on everything COVID took from us. So thanks. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Texas Franchise Radio was a radio show that me and one of my other business partners did for a while at the local radio station there in Conroe. We just all talked about things, Texas and franchising, and people who want to either turn their business into a franchise or getting into a new franchise. That's what that radio show was all about. But it did end in COVID and hasn't come back just yet. Yeah, but thanks. Good question. Mr. Stewart.
Challenges. You face some challenges along your pathway to success. Tell us about how you dealt with the failures and what failures you encountered along the path.
Stuart, that's a good question. And just being 100% open and honest with all you guys, it's been tough because it's not the actual failures. Like I said, the actual failures that come through in the business, really all that does is allow you to speed up that OODA loop and get back to work, right? The part that hurt me, Stuart, was what I was saying. Because we had just come off that 3-year run of just every year being better than the next, I had gotten used to winning and that success. And the way it's felt the last 18 months, the hardest part for me has been the self-doubt and self-judgment I've placed on myself. That's where the stress, the sleepless nights, panic attacks, all that came from, until I had to have the breakthrough realization that I am not my business, right? And there are things outside of my control that I can't control. I got to keep working hard and showing up and serving my business and everybody else as much as I can, but I can't own the outcome. If something happens outside of my control and the business doesn't make it, that's okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to keep doing those things. And even though you are in a tough season, remember that everybody's still pulling for you and supporting you. I had to rewire that in my head, Stuart, so I didn't let the self-doubt, really mess me up and cause me to not keep moving forward. That was it for me. It wasn't the challenges in the business. That just gives you more info to do better, right? It was the self-doubt and the self-judgment I had on myself. That was the hard part. Thanks, Stuart.
I have a question for you, actually. Yeah. Was there any moment throughout the process that you were ever offered an exit and questioned whether that was the right choice to exit or to continue with your dream?
You guys are really beating me up hard here today. Got a really great offer in November of 2019 that we said no to. And we said, just a couple more years, we think we can double that number. And we had, at that point, you got to think, November of 2019, we were 3 years of 100% revenue growth every year. So in 2019, we got a very great offer and we declined. So yeah, that's been fun.
Oh, sorry to bring that up. Didn't know about that.
No, it's really okay. I think I really don't. I don't, because I have had to go through this and I've had to ask myself some really deep questions over the years. I don't dwell on that. I don't lose anything on it. If I could go back and if I could take that deal today or have all the knowledge and experience I've learned over the last 20 months, I would keep the knowledge and experience over the money. It's going to serve me better in the future.
Last call for questions. Oh, we have one in the back. Wonderful.
So as a young entrepreneur and you're growing your business, how did you find your mentors?
Great question. Started digitally, right? Audible is, I still to this day go through probably 3 Audible books, about a week. Audible podcasts. If you can, this local community is amazing. If you go to the Woodlands Chambers events, the networking events, you are going to get connected with people that are in your industry or close to it. But digitally works really well too. Like I said, those Audible and then podcasts. And then just as I started to see people who did things we wanted to emulate, we loved a lot of things Orange Theory did. I would stalk them on LinkedIn. I'd message them. I'd pick their brain and ask them questions. So digitally is a great way to do it. And then locally, just getting out to the net and then just ask. You can go, I promise you, this is a cool community. You can go to JJ or Cindy and you can say, hey, I'm trying to do this. You know anybody like this? And they will probably have you connected to 5 or 10 people and very quickly. So yeah. Good question.
All right. Oh, one more.
Oh. Well, Mariana, thank you. I will get back to a podcast, right? We're kind of all hands on deck right now with Delta Life, trying to keep that thing moving back in the right direction. And luckily we've set up a lot of systems that have enabled us to kind of step back and let that business run. But also Cody and I are growing a marketing company, and then Hunter's got his placement with franchise consulting thing going. So, but eventually I'm going to get back to the podcast thing. Thanks for that. That was very sweet. Appreciate it.
All right. Josh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Another round of applause, please.